What's that coming over the hill? It's a monster, and it's a Churchill tank. You're making quite a strong case here, James, for, you know, this being one of the best tanks of the Second World War. Probably the best tank of the Second World War. Look at it. Heavy metal. Hello there, it's Al Murray here for WW2headquarters.com at the Tank Museum. And obviously the Tank Museum is very well known for Tiger 131, the Tiger tank that people flock here to see. But parked round the corner in a sunny glade is this absolute beast. What's that coming over the hill? It's a monster, and it's a Churchill tank. Now, we're going to look at the history of the Churchill tank in this film, and we're going to see that it doesn't get off to a very good start, but in a way that's the story of the British war effort. Yeah, stutters a bit to get going, yeah, when it gets going, but once things are underway, crushing everything in its path. And this tank exemplifies that exact arc, that story of the humble few clinging on in the face of Nazi aggression to the absolute steamrolling German army crushing and devouring machine that the British Army is by the end of the Second World War. And this tank exemplifies that perfectly. The Churchill, look at it, heavy metal. Well, we've talked about in previous films the iron triangle: protection, maneuverability, firepower. And of course the Churchill, oh no, it's got like a vertical armoured plate, and what we want is an angle to reflect. No. What they do with the Churchill, right? Yeah, it's a vertical armoured plate. They just stick more armour on it. They just make it even thicker. Look how much protection there is at the front of this tank. It's delicious. One of the things the Churchill's got going for it is really brilliant on very, very steep terrain. This tank could turn up exactly where the infantry need it to. It's an infantry tank after all, and that's one of its real bonus features. Plus, escape hatches. Crews like this tank because you can get out of it when it gets into trouble. Yeah, a really important feature. I mean, who wants to burn to death in a steel coffin, basically? The Churchill, because it's a wider tank, has got the turret ring that it basically can support any of the weapons the British Army need for it. 6-pounder, 75mm, the flying dustbin, easily my favourite piece of kit on a Churchill of the Second World War. On the Avery, a spigot mortar round for knocking down emplacements. This is a really great weapons platform. So it's got protection for the crew, the super thick armour, and the escape hatches. It's got manoeuvrability, you can get where you need it to, and of course it's got firepower. The Churchill absolutely nails the iron triangle. You can't argue with that, but it didn't to start with, and we need to look at the origins of this tank and its somewhat checkered early development with James now from the Tank Museum. So James, it's fair to say that the Churchill tank doesn't get off to the best start, and in fact we're leaning on a feature of the Churchill that exemplifies kind of the literally upside down thinking that goes into this tank when it's first brought out. Yeah, I mean, this sort of I don't understand it. So this is the later mark, the sensible one. This is the air intake for the engine, and the earlier ones, which we've got an example of in the museum, is the down. So it sucks up all the stuff getting chucked up off the tracks into the air intake. Into the air intake. Yeah. Okay.
So again, there's certain bits with this vehicle, it gets off to a really rough start. It's really rushed getting into service and all this sort of thing. But I don't understand that as a that's obviously going to happen kind of situation.
Yeah, it does. It does very much strike you as, I know you've not made any tanks before, right? Because that's what this comes down to. Is that it's Vauxhall are tasked with this. They've not made any tanks before.
No.
And really, in the grand scheme of things, nor has anybody, right?
No, not in the German sense or anything like that. You know, Vickers are about the only one that keep it ticking over.
Yeah.
But they're only one company, and we need a lot more companies. So Vauxhall obviously come in, and their solution to everything is Churchill.
Yes.
So just now, you need a new variant. Let's put a Churchill on it. But early ones of these were proper bad.
They're bad. And also they're being given, because after Dunkirk, of course, there is no kit. So there's a clean sheet of paper.
Yeah.
There's the invasion scare. So you need armoured fighting vehicles. You need tanks. You need them right now.
Yes.
And
we come up with absolute howlers of armoured vehicles in that period.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads to tanks with with air intakes that suck mud into themselves. But also an army that, the expansion of armour is seen as the solution to blitzkrieg, as it were. Sort of Blitzkrieg is going to be lots of tanks. And obviously you've got an entire population who aren't mechanically minded. So you do get this phase of when the Churchills arrive with units, they're reading the manual. It says tighten the nuts once a week or whatever. They tighten them to the point where they break them. And there's all that going on, right? Yeah,
so it really is that we want tanks, we want them quickly, we want them now. No one was happy with the Churchill when it came out.
Yeah, Churchill says, you've named it after me because it's no good, right?
Basically. Obviously, it's not named after him explicitly.
No,
it's named after his granddad.
Yeah.
But, sure.
Yeah.
How to secure a project's longevity, name it after the Prime Minister. But they're aware it's not very good, but it is pushed out because it's better than nothing.
Yes.
Another criticism is that when the thing's going along, the crew can't see anything because the dust gets everywhere.
Yeah.
They're having to wear goggles and the goggles aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
So even trying to fight the vehicle is an absolute nightmare. But they know that you open up the manual and the first page basically says that. They admit it's not very good, but we will improve it. We will get the upgrades to you. And Vauxhall is not just that. They take it back to the factory. They rework it completely from the ground up.
Yep.
And you end up with, the Mark III is still a bit on the sort of the dodgy side of it, but by the time we get to the Mark IV, it's a really very good tank.
Yeah, it's a great bit of kit. It's reliable. It can go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's a good gun platform.
Yeah.
And the crew are very well protected.
Yeah, you read the accounts of Churchill crew, and they're really complimentary of it because they can take hits. When they do take hits, they can get out.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the other things. Actually, the hatches are quite big on this.
Yeah.
Not, relatively speaking, obviously. But you've even got escape hatch on the side.
Yeah.
They're thinking about the crew a little bit more with this vehicle, but it's still going back to that infantry tank doctrine. We're going to need to cross trenches with it, attack fixed positions, all of this sort of stuff. So it's still arguably hamstrung by doctrine and railway loading gauges and all of this sort of stuff. But rocky start with this vehicle, but it does very prove itself by the end of the war. It's exceptional.
At Dieppe, the Germans capture some types, don't they, that are stranded, and they assess it and they go, well, this is a dog, and they can't imagine that the British are going to upgrade it and update it and improve it, can they?
No, even we're not sure. We go to the point of actually Churchill, the programme looks to be on the edge of failing. What do? So the T14, some of your slightly more tank-minded viewers might know it, but basically you get a Sherman and you make it a bit heavier, and you slap a bunch more armour on it, and you got what we now call, but kind of wrongly, the Excelsior, which if you look at it, it's a big Cromwell. And so they get this new tank that we're developing, the Cromwell whatever, and make it into an infantry support vehicle. They get canned because the Churchill project actually proves itself.
Actually turns itself around.
Even the Brits aren't sure that we're going to continue with it.
The original types have a howitzer in the front, don't they? Which sort of beggars belief.
Yes, again, it's that idea of the 2-pounder. We need that to take out armour, but it's not very good at dealing with anything else. So what do? We've got options. We've got a big tank. Let's put a howitzer in the hull. And it's not designed to take on anything else apart from it's a bunker buster. So you steer your vehicle towards where you want to fire and you open up.
Yeah.
But they don't like it. It gets in the way. The gunner doesn't really have enough room. You're having to then carry an extra ammunition type, which really impedes on storage. So by the Mark II, the Mark I and the IIs are basically the same, apart from the Mark II, you rip the howitzer out and put a Beezer in it.
Yeah. You could argue though that the cruiser the cruiser tank concept of going quickly is kind of like for the birds really, because the fighting in Normandy is at walking pace, is about close country. You need an infantry support tank in that situation, right?
You very much do, and the way they're organised reflects that.
Yeah.
So you've got they go through various iterations of various different names, so I'm probably going to get it wrong, but tank brigades, armoured brigades, in infantry divisions. So every British infantry division has integral armour support. Ideally we want them Churchills. We don't have enough, so a bunch of them get Shermans as well.
Yeah.
But we're again thinking that we know that they're going to come up into a situation where infantry are going to need tank support.
Yeah.
And then we put the cruisers. Well, by that point, it's Cromwell,
Yeah.
and they go into either reconnaissance regiments, or actually they equip 7th Armoured Div.
Yeah.
So we split them out in that way as well. So these aren't ever going to be for exploitation reasons. These are true infantry support.
tanks. So let's talk about the Churchill's greatest hits. It's great actions.
Yes.
Proves itself in Tunisia, right?
Yes, it really does. I mean, it sort of fights those sort of later northern desert battles. But by the time we're getting into Tunisia, it's really showing its worth.
That is a battle where the Churchill really comes into its own because it can handle the terrain. It's a big infantry battle too.
You're not going to outrun the infantry with this thing. They're going to be able to keep up and not get too annoyed with you. And its armour is thick enough that it can get in the Germans' faces. By the Mark IV, you're looking at just over 100 mil of armour, which is the same as a Tiger.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the Mark 7s and 8s, the heavy Churchills, they basically share like no components with each other, but they roughly a Churchill.
Yeah.
That's 152 millimetres of frontal armour.
Okay.
Which is an absurd amount.
Yeah.
It's not impenetrable. You know, the anti-tank guns are still going to go through it. Side armour is still vulnerable. But actually it means you can risk that tank in certain situations that a Sherman is going to be hideously vulnerable
And
to.
take a couple of knocks and maybe
Still
call it a
keep
day, but
fighting.
in the meantime you've kept fighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think the other thing that's really interesting about this is that quite clearly that this tank has had so much invested in it and has come good. The chassis then becomes kind of a solution to lots of problems, right?
Yeah.
So it goes into the Avry and associated types. So you've got it with the bobbin on. You've got it, laying carpet. You've got it with the spigot mortar, the flying dustbin. All those variations, which suggest that you want something. You don't need something quick for any of those jobs.
Nope. You want something versatile.
Versatile and reliable.
Yeah.
And this is it.
And it's a big box.
Yeah.
The hull is a big box, which means you can do many things with a big
Yeah.
box. Something that you aren't going to be able to do on that Matilda.
Yeah.
That hatch, for example, it sort of is an escape hatch, but actually on the Avry, it meant that some bloke can lean out, lob a Bangalore torpedo at a target, and from relative safety.
Yeah.
And it's got the armour to be able to deal with the close-in fortifications. You know, go across Normandy, and the Atlantic Wall is strewn with instances of these things hitting targets.
And the 79th Armoured Division then are operating this devolved way where they're involved in everything. They never turn up as a division, but they're literally everywhere doing everything.
Yeah.
And these tanks are central to that. Crocodile and all those sort of... And Crocodile, in a way, is the purest distillation of the infantry tank.
Really is, yeah.
Isn't it? Role. And in a sense shows that the infantry tank concept, if you dig into it in the right circumstances, is fine.
Yes, it works.
Yeah.
We did end up beating the Germans at the end of the day.
Yeah. Let's just take a moment to consider that. Yeah.
These things ground the Germans down.
Yeah.
Yes, as the Americans helped, I guess.
Up to
doing
a
the whole
point.
Cobra
Let's
thing.
not overdo it. Yeah.
But these things are encountering German armoured forces in a concentration the Russians can only dream of.
Yeah.
There's no concentration like they're getting in Normandy on the Eastern Front. So that they're grinding them down. They beat them, and then that allows the cruiser tanks to send it during the breakout in the Great Swamp.
Yeah, you get no breakout without the breakthrough, and these are the breakthrough tanks.
Yeah, really is. Really is.
Brilliant. And then the story doesn't end with the Second World War, though,
Certainly
because
not.
these things go to Korea.
Yeah, so one of the real sort of unsung parts of the Churchill, which was arguably by accident, is its climbing ability. Is it can go up anywhere. The multiple occasions where the Germans, you clearly see them on the map and they go, well, no, that's not tank country, you're not be able to get there, we're not going to defend it particularly well. These can climb that. So when we're going out to Korea, we're deploying the Centurion for the first time, which is an unknown quantity in many aspects. Like, right, what happens if we need infantry support high up in mountains? Well, a squadron of these things, the Mark 7s, with the flamethrower attachments, go out.
Right.
Unfortunately for them, they do leave the flamethrowers at the dockside, which a few months later, when the Chinese start careening over the border, it probably would have been quite
really
handy.
useful, yeah.
But they do go into action in Korea. They do, most of them sort of get blown up and lost, but Centurion proves to be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But this thing does stick around in British Army stocks for a fair while
Well,
after
then
1945.
you're making quite a strong case here, James, for this being one of the best tanks of the Second World War. Probably the best tank of the Second World War.
It has its limitations. I'm going to come back in with that. It's too slow.
Yeah.
It is simply too slow for the sorts of fighting that, especially people like Monty, want to start pushing for. You look at the Orbats that when we're pushing through the Low Countries and all of this, it's Shermans, it's Cromwells. These things are sort of stuck in fillets, going, oh God, they've left me again.
Yeah, they cannot do that.
Yes, the latter stages of the war, when you're looking at the skirmishes, when we're fighting up to Hamburg, these things aren't getting a look in because the pace of armoured warfare is just so great. But they're limited.
But when it bogs down in Blackcock and Veritable and those battles, bang, absolutely.
These things can be bought up.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, I mean, what I like about the one thing I like about the Churchill is it does look very antiquated and very much does look of its time. But there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's designed to cross trenches.
Yeah.
That's why it's so long, and you've got that track. It's not quite First World War-esque, but well, it's a track going all the way around the outside of a hull.
Yeah.
The influence has come from somewhere. But actually, there's those situations where you're fighting entrenched German positions where you do need to cross trenches. You do need to get in their face. And yet, it is limited, but actually it's limited, and it's more than good enough for most of what we need it for, actually.
One of the things that's, when you look at the photos from 45, is they're all covered with their own track, aren't they, as well?
Yeah.
And that the Churchill track is regarded as the absolute super alley track, isn't it? If you want protection.
Yeah. You whack it on.
You see Shermans with Churchill track sometimes, where they've obviously managed to purloin some.
Yeah. What's interesting as well is I didn't realise until recently, actually, a lot of Churchill track, we've bought it from the States.
Really?
Yeah. So we're not buying the tanks from the States, but we're buying the substitute components. And actually, one of my colleagues has still, there's question marks over it, but it looks to appear like we've bought the kit.
Right.
So all the armour plate in the various different pieces,
and then it's assembled,
shipped in from the States, assembled in the UK, which is
interesting.
really interesting.
That is fascinating.
Because our industry just cannot keep up with our demand.
Can't do it.
And we've got a readily available and willing ally that's more than happy to
churn out steel parts.
Yeah.
Amazing. So in a sense, the Churchill is a story of good things come to those who wait.
Yeah, and people who invest in a programme and make sure it works.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we had time, the first Churchill that rolled off the production line and were given to the troops, it would have been perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But again, we still had the capacity to think about other options during that. So we're doing it not quite on a shoestring budget at this point, but certainly within the limitations of industry that can actually be chucked out.
And the pure inexperience of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think, obviously, what this sort of represents is the apogee of the infantry tank idea. It's run its course through this vehicle, right?
Yeah, fully. But Matilda being the first two, Valentine is then used as, well, both depending on the situation, but it is technically a Matilda replacement. Yeah. And then you end up with Churchill. And it goes from the deserts all the way through to Berlin, really.
Yeah.
And by the time we get to the Mark 7, that is a formidable bit of kit to be coming up against. It really is.
So, British tank procurement then is all terrible.
Yeah. The system behind the procurement certainly probably needs an analysis at some point. But the vehicles it chucks out, actually, they're what's asked of it most of the time.
Yeah, and these go to the Soviet Union as well, and they don't have a problem with them.
Yeah, I think they find them all right. I think by the time that we're sort of getting these things out, that they're very much wedded to the T-34, and it's very hard to break them away from that because they've got a tank, and a tank will do.
That will suffice. But I think what we've done there conclusively is make the case that this is one of the absolute runners and very slow riders. I mean, walkers and slow riders in the success of British tank procurement during the Second World War, and actually the sort of perfect marriage of the doctrine and the piece of kit provided to meet that doctrine. Thanks for watching WW2headquarters.com with me, Al Murray, and James from the Tank Museum. Or is it James Holland reincarnated as a slightly younger, more handsome and better dressed version? We'll never know, will we? And please do like and subscribe in the way that Vauxhall liked and subscribed to this tank for several years until they got it right. See you soon. This thing is a beast, isn't it? Look at it, it's a monster. And you can help bring this monster back to life. Go to the Tank Museum website and chip in, why not? Just want to reiterate, this never happens. Yeah, cash. There we go. I'll have that bit.